Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping straight into a topic that's really transformed entertainment. I mean, completely changed how we watch things.
Yeah, the over-the-top content market, OTT.
Exactly. And it just keeps growing,
Okay.
right? No signs of stopping.
Not at all. And we've got some really interesting sources from you, our listener, specifically some detailed numbers, trend data. Looks like it's from cognitive market research.
That's the one. So our goal here in this deep dive is to really unpack these numbers you sent over, see what story they're telling us about, well, the global growth of streaming and all that direct-to-consumer stuff.
And the report itself calls it a phenomenal growth trajectory.
Right. That phrase alone kind of tells you the scale we're dealing with here. It's massive.
Okay, so let's get into it. Starting with the global picture. The scale is, well, it's pretty striking when you see the numbers laid out.
It really is. The source pegs the market value at around $113.7 billion. That was back in 2021.
Mm-hmm. And then look, just 4 years later, by 2025, it's projected to hit what, $196.4 billion?
Huh? Wow. So nearly doubling.
Yeah.
Just like that in 4 years.
Exactly. And this is where it gets, really interesting. Fast forward to 2033.
Yeah.
According to this data, that number just balloons. We're talking a massive $585.5 billion.
Hold on. From just over 100 billion to almost 600 billion.
Yeah.
In what, 12 years?
Yeah.
That's not just growth. That's an explosion.
It absolutely is. And the compound annual growth rate, the CAGR,
Right.
over that whole period, 2021 to 2033, it really captures the speed, and the consistency. The source puts it at 14.6%.
14.6%. That's incredibly rapid and sustained year after year globally.
Yeah, really strong.
Okay, so that's the big global headline. Huge growth. But what I find fascinating is when we start digging into the regions based on your sources.
Yeah.
Because it shows, while everyone's growing, some places are growing even faster.
Hmm.
And the market size is just vastly different to start with.
Absolutely. Let's connect that. North America, for instance, it starts as the largest market by value and stays that way through the forecast period.
Okay.
The numbers there, roughly $44.2 billion in 2021.
Right.
Hitting about $74 billion in 2025.
Okay.
And then projected to reach over $207 billion by 2033.
207 billion. And the regional growth rate, the CAGR for North America.
It's solid, 13.8% according to this.
13.8, okay. And within North America, I assume the U.S. is the giant.
Oh, yeah, absolutely dominates in value. Starts around $33 billion in 21 and projected to reach like $149 billion by 2033. Its growth rate's just over 13.4%.
Still very strong. And Canada.
Canada is also significant. Rises from about $7.3 billion up to over $36.7 billion by 2033.
Okay.
And its growth rate is actually a bit faster than the U.S., around 14.3% CAGR.
Interesting. Now, what about Mexico? Your sources flag something there, right?
They do. Mexico actually has the highest growth rate in North America. It's over 15.3% CAGR.
15.3.
Yeah. No, it starts from a smaller base, about $3.9 billion in 2021.
Sure.
But it's projected to hit around $21.6 billion by 2033. That faster growth rate, compared to the U.S. and Canada, that's definitely notable.
Okay, let's hop across the Atlantic. Europe, second largest market.
That's what the data says, yeah. Second largest.
Yep.
Revenue there surged from about $32.3 billion in 2021
32.3.
to about $55 billion in 2025. And the forecast for 2033, nearly $160 billion.
Wow, 160 billion. And Europe's overall regional growth, also pretty strong.
Very strong, about 14.3% CAGR for the region.
Okay. And your sources break down the big European players, right?
Yeah.
UK, Germany, France.
Yep, gives numbers for those. All showing substantial growth by 2033. Let's see, UK projected around $23 billion, Germany over $33 billion, France nearly $22 billion.
And their growth rates are?
Kind of in the 13% range. UK just over 13.1, Germany 13.7, France 13.5% CAGR. Solid.
But what's really fascinating in Europe, looking at the source, are some of the other countries with really high growth rates.
Exactly. That's where you see some outliers. Spain, for example, is mentioned at over 15.8% CAGR.
15.8.
And Denmark actually leads Europe, according to this source. Highest EGR topping 16.5%.
16.5%. Wow.
Yeah, projecting significant growth from its 2021 base. Switzerland's also way up there, over 16.3%.
So it shows that even within a mature region like Europe, you have these pockets of hypergrowth or faster adoption.
Precisely. And the source doesn't stop there. It gives numbers for Italy, Russia, Sweden, Luxembourg.
Right, showing it's a broad trend, not just the big 3 or 4.
Exactly. It's happening across the continent.
Okay, now, Asia Pacific.
Hmm.
This is where things get really interesting in terms of speed, right?
Oh, yeah. This region, according to the data, is projected to grow faster than both North America and Europe.
Faster. Okay. What's the CGR?
A really high 16.3% CGR overall for APAC.
16.3. Wow.
It went from about $23.7 billion in 2021 up to around $43.2 billion projected for 2025 and expected to reach nearly $145 billion by 2033.
So nearly 145 billion by 2033, growing faster than the 2 biggest regions currently.
Yeah.
What's driving that super fast growth?
Well, China is obviously a huge part of it, just in sheer value.
Right.
Projected to hit over $51.7 billion by 2033. And its CAGR is also very strong, 16.9%. The scale there is just immense.
16.9 for China. But hang on, look at India.
Yeah.
The source highlights India specifically.
Yeah.
Says it has the highest regional growth rate in APAC.
That's right. Over 17.6% CAGR for India.
17.6.
Now, it's starting from a smaller base, remember, just under $3 billion in 2021.
Sure, but growing that fast.
It's projected to hit over $20.5 billion by 2033. That suggests an incredibly rapid rate of adoption is happening there.
Definitely one to watch.
Absolutely. And the sources don't just stop at China and India. They give strong growth numbers and KGRs for Japan, South Korea, Australia, Singapore. Southeast Asia as a whole is listed with growth over 16.4%. Taiwan, too. It's diverse.
And this is wild, the rest of APAC's category in your source.
Yeah.
It apparently boasts the highest CAGR in the entire source data. Could you see that?
Get out. Really?
Yeah, over 17.9%.
Wow, 17.9.
Now, it's starting from a tiny value, like $0.3 billion in 2021.
Sure, but still.
But that growth rate, it really underscores how fast things are moving, even outside the major listed economies in that, well, incredibly diverse region.
That's a great point. Okay, let's shift gears. South America.
Right. What are the numbers there?
Market jumped from around $5.5 billion in 2021, hitting about $9.6 billion in 2025,
Okay.
and forecast to reach nearly $30 billion by 2033. The CAGR there is a healthy 15.2%.
15.2. And Brazil leads the way.
Yeah, Brazil leads in value and also has a really strong growth rate, over 15.9%. Projected to reach about $12.9 billion by 2033.
Okay.
And the source also shows, Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Chile, all with solid double-digit CAGRs. Like Colombia's over 15.6%, Argentina over 15.1%.
So robust growth pretty much across the continent there, too.
Seems like it. Then we have the Middle East.
Right. How's that looking?
Also showing very healthy growth. Went from about $4.8 billion in 2021
Okay.
to about $8.6 billion in 2025, expected to reach nearly $27 billion by 2033. And the CAGR is similar to South America, 15.3%.
15.3. Any standouts there?
Well, Qatar gets a specific mention. It's a smalling market in value right now, but it's highlighted for a particularly high growth rate, over 16.7% CAGR.
16.7. Interesting.
Yeah, projected to reach about $1.7 billion by 2033. But other major countries like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, UAE, Egypt, they also show solid growth, mostly in the 14 to 15% CAGR range.
Okay. And that leaves Africa.
Right, Africa. It's the smallest market by overall value among the regions listed in your source.
Okay, but still growing.
Oh, definitely not lagging in momentum. It goes from about $3.3 billion in 2021
$3.3 billion.
to about $5.9 billion in 2025 and reaching over $16.6 billion by 2033.
$16.6 billion. And its growth rate.
The regional CAGR is just under 13.9%.
13.9, okay.
And within Africa, countries like Nigeria are listed at over 14.2% CAGR. South Africa, a bit lower at 13.2%. And the rest of Africa category also shows solid growth, over 14.3%.
So even in the smallest regional market by value, the expansion is still pretty significant.
Absolutely. It's happening everywhere.
So, okay, let's try and pull this all together. What does this all mean? If we synthesize these trends, specifically from your cognitive market research source,
Yeah.
the picture seems undeniably clear, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Massive, consistent, maybe even accelerating growth across the entire globe.
Totally. The OTT market isn't just like getting a bit bigger. It's projected to be over 5 times larger by 2033 than it was just back in 2021.
5 times. That's huge.
And while every region is growing strongly, we definitely see differences in the rate of growth.
Right. Asia Pacific, the Middle East, South America, they seem to be leading the pack in percentage terms, the CAGR,
Mm-hmm. Followed by Europe, North America, and then Africa.
which I guess could suggest different things, right? Maybe
Mm.
different stages of market maturity or unique local factors pushing adoption faster in some places.
Could be. And it's also clear that specific countries, or even those broader categories like India, China, Qatar, Denmark, Switzerland, Spain, Mexico, and that super high growth rest of APAC.
Yeah, that 17.9%.
Those are showing exceptionally high CAGRs. It
Yeah.
really points towards these potentially being, the really dynamic markets driving future innovation. Maybe different content strategies are needed there.
And just to reiterate, all this data, these specific numbers and CAGRs, they come straight from the cognitive market research source you provided us.
Yeah, painting a picture of a truly rapidly shifting global landscape for content.
That deep dive into your sources.
Yeah,
It really does paint that picture, doesn't it? How content's consumed globally is changing fast, and it's driven by this immense market expansion.
absolutely.
So the key takeaway seems pretty clear. The OTT content market is just exploding worldwide,
Hmm.
but with really significant differences between regions and even between countries, in both the current market size and, crucially, the speed of expansion.
Right. And it all points towards a much, much bigger global industry, just, 10 years down the line, less than that now.
Yeah, by 2033.
And it's not just about who's the biggest now, is it? It's also about who's growing the fastest. That kind of hints at where the future powerhouses might emerge or where the biggest shifts might happen.
That's a really interesting point, which leads to a final thought, maybe, based purely on the source material we've discussed.
Okay.
Given these incredible growth numbers and these really diverse rates of expansion, 17+% in some areas, 13% in others, how might the sheer scale and the reach of OTT content actually evolve differently in these various markets by 2033 compared to how things look today?
Like what kind of content delivered how? What wins in a market growing at nearly 18% versus one growing closer to 13%?
Exactly. Are the strategies the same? Does the content look the same? It's definitely something to think about. Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're really plunging into the world of over-the-top content. The whole streaming universe that's completely changed how we watch things.
Oh, absolutely. It feels like it's everywhere now, doesn't it? These OTT platforms, they're just central to media consumption today.
Right. So our mission here is to unpack what's really fueling this enormous growth in the market, but also critically look at the big challenges holding it back.
Yeah, we want to get into the key forces at play. We've been digging into a lot of analysis, particularly some interesting stuff from cognitive market research.
Exactly. We've got some fascinating insights, some hard numbers, too, that really tell the story. So let's get into it.
That's good.
Okay, so diving right in. The growth we've seen, it's been, well, nothing short of phenomenal. What are the really powerful forces driving that momentum right now?
Well, one massive engine, especially when you look at really diverse markets like India, is this incredible surge in demand for regional content. Cognitive market research and others really point this out.
Regional content. Okay, why is that such a game changer?
Because fundamentally, it speaks directly to cultural nuances, specific languages, things that global content just often can't capture in the same way.
Right.
We're seeing regional OTT platforms getting huge traction by offering content that's really tailored, mythological stories, local historical dramas, original series just for specific language groups.
And it's not just about watching in your own language anymore, is it? I hear subtitles are playing a big role, too.
Huge role, absolutely. It just breaks down those barriers, doesn't it? Enables that cross-language viewing. Industry talks suggest, well, a pretty significant chunk of viewers, maybe 20% up to even 50%, are using subtitles or dubs to watch stuff outside their main language.
Wow, up to half.
Yep.
So people are really seeking out shows based purely on interest. Language isn't the wall it used to be. That's massive.
It is.
I actually saw a FICCIPWC report saying regional language viewing is projected across 50% of total time spent on OTT. That's huge.
Yeah, and the actual number of regional titles is climbing too. That same report noted it went from, 47% in 2021 up to 52% in 2023.
So the content is there. And people are watching it.
Exactly. And that scale, it presents both a challenge and a huge opportunity for platforms that want national reach. I mean, in India, for example, to really cover the market, you might need to properly support, say, 8 or even 9 different languages.
8 or 9 languages just for one country's market.
It shows the diversity. And the numbers from India in 2024 are really striking. The viewer base jumped to 347 million. And get this, a staggering 60% of the content consumed was in regional languages.
60%. Wow. That's the clear majority then. Which languages are leading that?
So Telugu is currently the highest, around 15% of consumption. Then you've got Tamilan at 13%, Malayalam at 8%, and Bengali around 7%.
Interesting. And where are people watching this? Still mostly big screens.
Nope. Overwhelmingly on the go. Smartphones account for something like 70% of all viewership.
Okay, that really drives home how vital localization and mobile-first thinking are for these platforms.
It certainly does. Now, shifting gears just a bit, another really immense driver, something accelerating growth, is the increased streaming of live sports and events.
Ah, yeah, that makes total sense.
Mhm.
Fans want that seamless watch-anywhere experience for games. Platforms like DAZN, ESPN+, even Amazon Prime Video jumped on that early.
They did, and now you're seeing the big players like Netflix making really aggressive moves into sports. And the early signs suggest it's working for them.
Really? What kind of results are they seeing from these big sports events?
Well, take the Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson fight earlier this year. Netflix apparently pulled in about 1.4 million U.S. signups just for that.
1.4 million.
Just for one fight.
Yeah. And for the NFL Christmas Day games in 2024, it was around 700,000 signups. Now, okay, the retention from those specific events might have been slightly below their usual average.
But it's still significantly outperformed what competitors saw for those same events. So it's definitely bringing new people through the door.
Okay, so it's a powerful acquisition tool for them. And it looks like they're doubling down, not stopping there.
Not at all. Netflix is clearly expanding its live sports footprint. They've secured deals with major names like WWE, and they've got exclusive global rights for the FIFA Women's World Cup in 2027 and 2031.
Wow. The price tag for these live sports rights must just be astronomical.
Oh, they are. Just look at the Indian Premier League, the IPL. The media rights for the 2023-2027 cycle auctioned for roughly 6.2 billion US dollars.
6.2 billion for just a few years of cricket.
Yep, and that actually pushed the IPL past the English Premier League. It's now the second highest valued sports media property in the world, only behind the NFL.
That really puts the scale of investment needed into perspective. So, looking ahead, what's the projection for sports streaming, say, in the U.S. market?
Well, the forecast suggests that by 2025, the number of U.S. viewers streaming a live sports event, at least monthly, is set to rise to over 90 million.
90 million.
Up from what?
Up from around 57 million back in 2021. So that growth trajectory just highlights the huge value and obviously the revenue potential that live sports represents for these OTT platforms.
Okay, so we've got these really strong tailwinds, huge demand for regional stories, the explosion in live sports streaming, pushing things forward. But, despite all that growth, the OTT market faces some pretty significant challenges too. What are the main roadblocks?
Yeah, there are definitely hurdles, and probably one of the most persistent and frankly damaging issues, something highlighted in analyses like cognitive market researches, is content piracy.
Ah, piracy. That seems like a constant battle, hard to really stamp out completely. How big of an impact does it actually have?
It's massive. A report from Viacom 18 Digital Ventures a few years back, 2021, I think, estimated piracy could be hitting anywhere between 25% and maybe even 50% of an OTT platform's potential revenue.
Wow, up to half. Yeah, that's a huge slice gone. It really can. There was a huge example just this year, 2024, when Italian authorities managed to dismantle a major piracy network. This thing was giving illegal access to services like DAZN, Netflix, Amazon Prime.
To how many people?
To an estimated 22 million subscribers, all across Europe.
22 million illegal subscribers just from one network. That's staggering.
It is, and the network was reportedly pulling in about $3 billion a year in illegal revenue. the estimated damages. Over 10 billion combined to the companies affected. Those numbers just show the sheer economic drain piracy causes.
10 billion euros. Yeah, that certainly puts the scale of the problem into stark perspective.
It really does. Now, another major restraint, something the consumer definitely feels, is related to high subscription fees, which is feeding into rising churn rates.
Ah, churn. People canceling subscriptions. Makes sense. With so many different platforms now, everyone's probably a lot more price sensitive.
Exactly. If a platform hikes its price, consumers can, and definitely do, just cancel. Maybe they'll jump to another service, or maybe just wait until a specific show they want comes back.
And we're seeing this reflected in company results, aren't we? I think Investors Business Daily pointed out how Disney streaming revenue went up because of higher prices, but they were also bracing for fewer subscribers overall.
Precisely. And what's really interesting is this trend highlighted in a Wall Street Journal report from 2024. It showed a growing number of subscribers are actually rejoining services they canceled.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it found 34.2% of subscribers came back within a year. That was up from about 29.8% in 2022.
So people aren't leaving for good necessarily. They're just hopping or pausing.
Exactly that. It suggests more people are sort of cycling through subscriptions, pausing them maybe to manage their overall entertainment budget, rather than just quitting a service permanently. This turn and return is becoming a thing.
Huh. That must make it incredibly difficult for platforms trying to build a stable, predictable revenue stream.
It absolutely does. In the U.S. market, overall subscriber churn has been hovering around a pretty substantial 40%. That creates real revenue challenges.
40% is high.
It is. Even for someone like Netflix, which usually has lower churn than many others, they reported a rate around 2.5% in Q1 2023. That might sound small, but it still meant losing 200,000 subscribers just in that quarter.
Right.
And these high churn rates, they directly hit the financial stability of these services. It makes it much harder to forecast income, harder to justify those huge investments in new content or technology, or, buying those incredibly expensive live sports rights we were just talking about.
So looking back at this deep dive, the OTT content market,
Hmm.
it's clearly this really complex, dynamic battlefield. On one side, you've got these powerful growth drivers like the explosion in regional content and the massive pull of live sports.
Yeah, and on the other side, they're constantly grappling with these significant hurdles like, pervasive content piracy and that really delicate balancing act between subscription prices and keeping churn down.
It feels like a constant race for innovation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Trying to grab and maybe even harder keep our attention when there are just so many options out there.
Yeah, definitely. And as we've talked about, these insights, they come from digging into comprehensive market analysis, including that data and perspective from cognitive market research, which helped frame our chat today.
And understanding these drivers, these restraints, it's really relevant for you, the listener, whether you're deciding which streaming service to pick next, or maybe thinking about investments in media, or even just trying to get a handle on the trends shaping how we all watch stuff now. It shows you the incredible opportunities, but also the very real risks.
Which kind of leaves us with a final thought for you to maybe mull over. We've seen how specific niches like regional stories and live sports have become massive drivers. So what do you think might be the next specific type of content or maybe viewing experience that could really come along and dramatically reshape this whole OTT landscape again?
Something to chew on until our next deep dive.